Hey, what up, y'all? Thank y'all so much for dropping by today, man. So we got a big one today. We got to talk about some budgets at the box office and why I felt like, basically Sony failed at the box office when it comes to the Spider-Verse that they tried to create. Now, we can start off with why didn't they ever use Miles Morales as Spider-Man, like versus Venom, versus Craven the Hunter, versus Morbius or Madam Web or Carnage. These are big, A-list. Like, a lot of people know them. Like, they didn't use Goblin, they didn't use Rhino, they didn't use Electro Lizard. They didn't use these characters as spin-offs to make their own movie. They chose to go and make D-list, B-list, C-list, and D-list characters as their main villains and make a spin-off movie with them in the Spider-Verse, in Sony's Spider-Verse, but they didn't have Spider-Man. And a lot of people were asking, why didn't you put Spider-Man in there? And the only thing I can come up with is, why didn't they just use Miles Morales and Venom? Like I said before, Craven the Hunter, Morbius, Madam Web. Why didn't they use Miles? His games are doing good. The Spider-Verse Miles Morales, anime series Spider-Verse is doing good. So why didn't you put him in the villains, and have him versus, these characters? Craven the Hunter grossed only 62 million at the box office. That is crazy. Like, to think they can make something that low, and they could have did better in just calling it Spider-Man Miles Morales, versus Craven the Hunter as the villain. It could have been like Miles Morales, Spider-Man, of course, Miles Morales, and Craven the Hunter, or as the villain in that movie. That movie would at least probably hit around 400, 500 million, just using Spider-Man name alone, just the name alone. But I think what Sony didn't want to do is they didn't want to tarnish the name. They didn't want to mess the brand up. So if these spinoffs didn't do well, they didn't destroy Spider-Man name, because they know they didn't have a budget to make it look like a Spider-Man movie all out. Like, they didn't have a budget to go all out and make it just like, let's say, for example, I was watching a Spider-Man fight, right, between Spider-Man and Mysterio. And I was just thinking, why didn't they just take Spider-Man out of the Mysterio? Like, I'm just using this as an example. Let's say Mysterio came off with a spinoff, kind of like Kraving, Morbius movie, right? And they used that same production, same CGI, same action when he was fighting the Waterman in that fight scene. But the movie didn't have Spider-Man. That same production, that same cinematic, features and that they used in that. If they would have made a spinoff with that and probably even put through, Miles Morales in there, I think they could have had something to work with, because people look at that. They don't like low budget looking films like a knockoff Spider-Man movie without Spider-Man. Everybody's looking like, okay, where is the main character? That's what everybody's looking for. Like, Madam Web only made 100 million at the box office. Craven around 60 million. Madam Web around 100 million at the box office. Flop after flop after flop. Now, a lot of people will say, well, it didn't have Spider-Man, so give them the benefit of the doubt. Like, they didn't have the main superhero in the movie. They tried to make their own universe, but they didn't use Miles Morales. They didn't bring that, CGI. They didn't bring that cinematic, quality that the big screen has. It looks like a TV show or something. It don't have the quality of a blockbuster smash hit at the box office at AMC theaters and stuff like that. They don't have that type of backing that Sony should have put in these movies, which is, I would say, that they could have did that with Miles. They could have did it, but either they don't have the budget, they don't have the rights, they just didn't want to do it. They don't have the writers. They don't have, it's a lot of stuff goes into making this production team and making it right, because they don't want the two Spider-Mans to clash. And then what if Miles' character does better now, being that he have all these cool powers, and they bring him to the big screen? They make his movie exactly like the video game, the Miles Morales video game, but you bring it to the big screen, the quality, and everybody was like, well, he should have been in the last Spider-Man. They could have, in the Spider-Verse, they should have put him out there already, leading up to a spinoff, Spider-Verse with Sony. Miles Morales should have already been in like one of the last Spider-Mans or something like that, to have his own spinoff. But Sony wasn't thinking. Then you got a clash with Disney, making all this woke stuff. Marvel with all this woke stuff. They're trying to inject, DEI and push identity politics and woke everything up. They're not focusing on what the fan base want. The customer is always right? So that's why I was saying Kraving the Hunter, only 60 million. Like, that is bad. So you couldn't pay a little extra. You couldn't, shell out a little extra money to put a Miles Morales universe, make his own universe spinoff. It didn't have to have anything to do with the actual Spider-Man, but those same villains, they could have even used all of the villains in Miles Morales game, like the Prowler, for example. They could have used him. They didn't have to use all the Spider-Man characters, but it would have made more sense if they were going to make a universe to just spin off with Miles universe, Sony, and kind of separate it from what Marvel was doing with the Avengers, in the multiverse. I don't know if they knew how to really do it, because it seems confusing to try to bring a new Spider-Man in, and Disney and Marvel is already trashing everything up with all these flops. See, this is what happens when you get away from source material. You end up with Sony wants to branch out and do their own thing, but Disney have so many flops. They need Spider-Man to stay and play with Marvel characters. That's why they're trying to add so many Punishers and the Hulk and some more characters into the new Spider-Man. Is it Brand New Day or something like that? Or something. They need those characters to be over there with Spider-Man now to hype their movies back up for Doomsday, because Disney have dropped the ball. They brought out all of these garbage D-list characters that nobody wanted. C-list, D-list characters nobody wanted. Ironhearts of the world. Think about it, like I said, Madam Web. People ain't wanting these characters. You barely can get the Thunderbolts people to accept the Thunderbolts. They want to make the Thunderbolts the new Avengers. Everybody like, nah, that ain't. We got to bring back all of the old people, because the contracts, people feel like they're being undercutted, lowballed. Disney's trying to pay people half the price, and get a discount on all of these big time actors because they messed up the brand. That's why Sony is failing, and Sony seems like they're having such a hard time getting the Spider-Verse off the ground, because Marvel and Disney keep bringing it down because they won't allow certain characters to be used. Certain people are under contract. These movies ain't even making enough money to even want to continue with Spider-Verse. And if they did, they said they're going to start to put Spider-Man in there. Now, are they going to use Spider-Man, or are they going to spin off and try to use Miles Morales and Spider-Man together? They need to introduce him like they did in Civil War and the Avengers, when they introduce all the characters and then they go off with their spin-off movie. Now people are familiar with these characters they never seen on the big screen, but they are cool. Like Thor of the world, Iron Man of the world, Black Panther, Captain America, Vision, all of these awesome characters, Hawkeye, Loki, people like these characters in a team up movie. But Sony really didn't put all of them together, which is they probably should have. The last multiverse or whatever Spider-Man, before they started a Sony, verse with the Spider-Verse, they should have put all of these characters, and they should have put Miles Morales in a team up in a multiverse, so that everybody would have been introduced to all of this chaos was going to be going on. Like, everybody would have been waiting on them. But now when you just come out with something, nobody's familiar with none of these characters they haven't really seen on the big screen like that. And then you didn't even have Kraving the Hunter fighting in a multiverse against Spider-Man so that he could branch off and go be successful. They should have did one by one. Venom should have actually had his own verse too, but that's going to be another video. I'm gonna save that for another video. Why I felt like Sony should have went with the Venom universe instead of trying to make a Spider-Man universe, because Venom was already doing good. They just could have rode that wave and just make, and make a Venom 1, 2, and 3, and just have all these, D-list characters that they want to bring out solo films for, and it just could have been all Venom universe, and then probably work on a separate Spider-Man in the Miles Morales universe that way with your big A-list characters, B-list characters. Don't try to go to C, D, E, F, G characters. Like, people like, what is this? This ain't even entertaining at this point because people not familiar with them like that. Like, if you have to be deep in the comic books, like, and a lot of people are just moviegoers from what I'm seeing. And when Disney leave a bad taste in everybody's mouth for pushing all these agendas and identity politics and all this woke stuff, it puts a bad taste in their mouth for all their products. So even if it is Spider-Man, it can still affect Marvel because of one side of the studio is messing up. Well, I don't trust their work either. I don't trust Sony either. I don't trust X-Men and with Fox either. And it's just a shame that it came to this. And now Sony is like digging and scraping to build a universe with these characters, and they can't even really do it when it comes to movies. Now, gaming is something different. I know they're anti-consumer and they want to lock Spider-Man down to a plastic box, PlayStation, PS5, PS4. I get all that, and PC, we get that part. That's something totally different. But when it comes to movie, a Miles Morales movie, he should have been either Venom universe or Miles Morales universe. Some type of Spider-Man character should have been in these movies. That was a bad call. If I was at the board meeting, Marvel, Sony, whatever, Disney, and I was a diehard fan, and I want to see these movies do good. I don't want to see these are people jobs at stake, production, film, directors, people in the background, the people that do the costumes. All these jobs are at stake when somebody dropped the ball. When you waste hundreds of millions, even billions of dollars pushing agendas and going woke, you can go broke. That's why Spider-Man got sold off back in the day. That's why X-Men got sold off, because these companies and production companies and Marvel and stuff, they started losing so much money. And then they have to make a move. They say, hey, okay, well, we can come off for some of these IPs. If they do good, then, we can get back up to the top. Which is Disney was crushing it at the box office. I mean, they were killing it. They were making billions and millions of dollars, and then they just ruined it due to now the company is ego driven, pride and ego, the people at the top. And now Sony have to battle their way to not go under, because they have to lift Disney and Marvel back up. It's like it's a sinking ship, a sinking battleship. Only one ship is holding up, and the other two are sinking, and they are way heavier. Disney and Marvel. Then you got to think about Star Wars, other companies that Disney own, Star Wars and Pixar. Only one ship, and Spider-Man is holding on. And then you can go with X-Men and Deadpool if you want to as well. But so far, Spider-Man is their biggest character that Sony do not want to mess up. That's why they did not want to put Spider-Man in none of these movies, because it was like, okay, if this is the gold mine, right, Spider-Man right now, and they're thinking maybe Doomsday, maybe, and if that don't go well, it's up for Disney. I don't know how they win everybody back, even with doing Doomsday and Secret Wars. We'll have to see how that play out. But when it comes to this Spider-Verse, and they got rid of, they didn't put no Spider-Man, no Venom, no Spider-Man or Miles Morales, and Kraving the Hunter, Morbius, Madam Web, it was just bad. It was just a bad universe, and then you have Miles Morales. Should they have brought that to anime first and then made the movie? Possibly so. Because his universe, his Spider-Verse is doing so good. Miles Morales anime is doing so good. I'm talking about it sells like hotcakes, box office smash hit. Should they have put a Kraving the Hunter, Morbius, or Madam Web in that universe? Because people would have been familiar with them in anime, and then it could have came to live action. That could have worked too. But see what happened when you don't listen to your fans? You flop. See what happened when Disney go woke? They go broke. And now they're begging for Gen Z and man to come back. But now it's like we're trying to come up with how can we say the movie industry with all the content creators. I watch a lot of superhero content, movie content, gaming content to see how we can get things back on track. And it just seems like Disney is going to be a work that is going to be a job to get through to them, because it's so much pride, ego, money, billionaires, trillionaires, shareholders. It's so many people that you got to go up against. Iger and Feige, Kevin, those guys are just, I think it's time for a new management, a new direction. They got to build a new roadmap. Sony got to build a new roadmap. And it's just, this is a difficult time in the movie industry from what I'm saying. It's going to be 5 to 10 years probably before we can even get close to getting back to where we were. And I'm talking about dropping nothing but bangers, like 4 to 5 movies a year. And that's just to get half the people back. You may not even get all the people back, because that taste, that wokeness, that just disgusts people, that bitterness is just like you broke the franchise. You split the fan base in half when they did that. And to this day, they still refuse to admit it. They feel like they didn't do anything wrong. And everybody kept telling them, listen, you go woke, you go broke. Now, I'm just like trying to figure out something with how can, if Sony do want to continue this universe, and they say they want to put Spider-Man in it, they want to put Spider-Man in there in these villain movies like Venom and Morbius and Mighty. They want to, these spin-offs from the Spider-Verse, but they don't really want to, if that makes sense. And I say, to play on the safe side, why don't you make an anime series? Use Miles Morales, put the characters that you want to make a live action with to make people more familiar with them, like a team up movie with the big A-list character. Don't be bringing out C-list, D-list and trying to do what James Gunn did with Guardians of the Galaxy. Everybody, that's not everybody's vision. Everybody can't do what James Gunn do. That's not their vision. Action-packed, comedy, goofy, fun. They don't have that vision. They don't. They don't have the writers. They don't have the vision to do that. Sony clearly should have probably hired him first before DC got him. Then you would have had a Morbius banger movie. You would have had a matter what these movies. Venom would have been a banger, because you would have had the director and the production team and the writers, to do it. It would have been a little goofy, but it would have been a little action packed, little goofy, little hilarious, but it would have worked with these characters, because the vision that he knows how to stick the source material, right? Comic booky, but bring it to the live action. Cartoony maybe, but bring it to live action movies. Blockbuster smash hit right there. I'm just trying to come up, because I don't want to see these companies fail. I don't. A lot of people say, oh, well, you probably just want to see them fail. No, I don't. I don't like seeing all these flops, because I feel like this is people's livelihood. This is how people eat, feed their families. Y'all always want to go against woke and da-da-da. We know what they're doing at the top. We can see it. We're not blind. We're not pushing agendas, all that abomination that we don't care about, making hot garbage trash that we are going to reject it, because it's disgusting and it's nasty. And it leaves a bitter taste in the fan base mouth, because they're like, nah, I don't even want to deal with Disney, Marvel. Some people say they don't even want to see another Disney movie unless it's from like the early 2000s or 90s. They won't even go. They say, I don't even want to go look at Snoop Dogg. He don't even want to go to a Disney product anymore. Terrified of what he's going to see on the big screen. And he's getting all kind of backlash for that. So I'm just trying to find a way how we can get this back on track, because I really like these characters. I think they are awesome. They're cool. Big shout out to Sony when it comes to movies trying to make a universe. So I'm not bashing them, but I'm just thinking of a new direction that we can go You know, kind of trying to give them some tips, because you never know. Stuff can go viral. This can make it to the front desk and say, you know what, maybe we should put all of these villains into Miles Morales game or live action, and bring it all together, and then bring it to the live screen, into the big screen live action. Put it in the anime games, bring it to live action. Put it in the anime series, maybe even come out with TV shows, get people more familiar with these characters. When you just randomizing characters and just bringing out uncool characters, and you got all of these characters on Spider-Man, but you ain't using Goblin, you ain't using Dr. Octopus, you know, you ain't using Lizard, Rhino. You using characters that you know don't nobody really care about, know about like that. Maybe sell Kraving. Kraving was pretty cool, but it wasn't done right, because you tried to make him fight another villain instead of the superhero. That's where you went wrong. You can't try to make a villain fight another villain, but it ain't a villain that don't nobody care about. If it was Electro and Goblin, you know, fighting, that would be something different. You know, you would have Sandman or Waterman fighting, you know, Mysterio. That would be something different, and it have the cinematic quality of a blockbuster smash hit at AMC. It's hard to go wrong with that. So we'll have to wait and see. Y'all guys already know what to do. I'm gonna leave it right there. Make sure you smash that like, that subscribe button, click that notification bell, so you can be notified on all of the new latest and greatest news out here in these superhero streets. Peace.